Here's a great book. It's called In 6 Days. And this is 50 scientists. They're all PhDs. And throughout the book, each one of them tells why they believe in a 6-day creation that is recent, not billions of years ago. It's a great book. It's called In 6 Days. It's in print. I know that. You can order this by John Ashton, PhD. In 6 Days. Great book. And just lays out that these are 6 24-hour days, not billions of years. You see, people embrace billions of years because they want mistake to have fortuitous, concurrences to have produced all this. That's like driving, a truck, a pickup truck filled with all different color paints into the Sistine Chapel, put some C4 explosive under it and detonate it, and it paints the picture on the ceiling. Michelangelo didn't do that. It was a paint explosion that painted the scene on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It's more ridiculous. This is more complicated than that. And people want to add billions of years because they want to get God out of the picture. So Dr. Robert Gentry, and I'll mention these names because you can look all of them up. Dr. Robert Gentry, Oak Ridge Labs, is the one, he's a geologist, and he's the one who said the Earth can only be several thousand years old because of the halo rings they've discovered inside of the granite, that if there was long periods of time, they wouldn't be there. They were fossilized and frozen there, which speaks of a very fast form of coming into existence. Dr. Melvin Cook, physical chemist, Nobel Prize nominee. He said the amount of helium in the atmosphere. Now, you have to understand these guys. This is a helium guy, okay? We need these kind of people in the world. But he discovered all he wanted to do was study helium his whole life. I'm glad, because what I knew about helium didn't have anything to do with this. Robert Gentry Dr. Melvin Cook, physical chemist, Nobel Prize nominee, he said the amount of helium in the atmosphere doesn't escape. It doesn't break down. So the amount of helium in the atmosphere is measurable, and it tells us how long the atmosphere has existed. He said by the measurement of helium in our atmosphere, the Earth has to be maximum 10 to 15,000 years old. Dr. Harold Schlusser, geophysicist, astrophysicist, studies the breakup of comets. I might study comets, not the breakup of comets, but that's what he does. And he said, by the way they break and get swept out of our universe by magnetic forces in the bigger planets, that our universe can't be any more than 10,000 years old, max. He also is part of the team that studied the moon dust, because they figured they knew how many tons of dust settled on the moon per year, and they knew they were sending the first lunar landing there, and they were worried about our astronauts stepping out, and when they figured that the universe might be 4 billion years old, they come up with all these figures, they figured there could have been as much as the moon dust could have been 400 feet deep. So they made the engines not to clog up on dust. They went through all of this stuff. And when if you see those old pictures of the astronaut jumping out, you'll notice he hangs onto the ladder because he thinks he's going to go down. Well, he hit the ground. You see his legs jammed because it was only 1/8 of an inch to 3 inches all across the moon of moon dust. And by their own figures, that tells them that the moon can't be any older than 7,000 to 8,000 years old. Dr. Thomas Barnes, University of El Paso, physicist. And I didn't get these out of this book. These are just 50 other guys you can meet there. He's a guy who studies the decay of the magnetic field. How's the magnetic field around the Earth decaying? How does it break down? Well, he says, he came to these figures that every 1,400 years it breaks down in half. So 1,400 years ago it was twice as strong as it is now. He says, and when he did his figures, in 580 AD, 580 years after the death of Christ, the magnetic field of the Earth was twice as strong as it is today. 820 years before Christ, 1,400 years earlier, it was 4 times what it is today. And he said, when I took those figures back 20,000 years, the earth was too hot, almost molten, to supply any life. So by his figures, the earth is somewhere maximum between 6,000 and 15,000 years old. United States Naval Observatory and the Royal Greenwich Observatory since 1836 have done over 100 observations of the sun, measuring the sun, measuring against eclipses and all of this, and they concur with each other in all of their studies that the diameter of the sun is shrinking 5 foot per hour. Now, the sun's so big, nobody notices. It's not like you wake up tomorrow and say, man, it'll never be what it used to be. It was so big yesterday. That it's shrinking 5 foot per hour, which comes out to 4 million tons of mass per second burning off the sun. 4 million tons of mass per second. And of course, as it was bigger, that would have been exponentially, that would have gone up. What they figured in these two observatories in over 100 studies since 1836 is that 100,000 years ago, the sun would have been twice its present size, and life on Earth would not have been able to exist. It would have been so hot. They figured 20 million years ago, the surface of the sun would have been touching the surface of the Earth. 400 billion years ago, which is the figure some of the evolutionists come up with, 400 billion years ago, the sun would have filled the entire known universe. Mississippi Delta, the amount of silt, they measure the sediment, what's happened there. By those studies, they figure the Earth is between 4,000 and 6,000 years old. The saline content of the minerals in the ocean, they know at the present rate how it's being added as the shores break down and so forth. Because nitrates and uranium don't break down, they don't recycle. By the level of minerals in our oceans, those scientists figure the Earth is between 6,000 and 10,000 years old. How about this? You go into the caves, you go to Crystal Cave, and you guys cave guys? I might go into a really nice big cave. I'm not crawl through a muddy cave guy. That's not me. Dark, When I was in the Boy Scouts in the 1800s, and I went to Philmont Scout Camp in New Mexico, they took us down inside of a gold mine, and the guy, when he gets you way down in there, turns the light out. It's fun for him, but you're standing there and it's so black you're seeing fireworks. I mean, it's just, it just was amazing. I couldn't believe how dark it was. But when you go in these caves and they show you stalactites and stalagmites, they say millions of years. That's how long these take to form. Just an interesting observation. They finished building the Washington Monument in 1923. 1968, they were doing a cleaning project, and they had to go under the Washington Monument, and they found 5-foot-long stalactites under the Washington Monument that take 5 million years to form.